What if I told you that there comes a time of day when destiny decides whether you will prosper or remain trapped in the same old cycle, a silent, almost invisible instant where everything, absolutely everything, begins to align or fall apart? Most people ignore this moment, but those who understand it completely transform their lives. Shalom, I am Rabbi David, and a few years ago, I was nothing more than an exhausted accountant. I worked too much, slept too little, and lived with the feeling that something essential was missing: a strength, a clarity, a purpose. I believed I needed more time, more luck, more opportunities, until I realized that it wasn't the world that needed to change. It was the way I started my day. Back then, I used to wake up like many still do, late, anxious, already thinking about bills, emails, tasks. The alarm clock would ring and I would react as if the day were an enemy to be conquered. I wasn't in control of anything. I was controlled by everything, by notifications, by pressures, by outside voices. And the more I tried to control life, the more it slipped through my fingers. But one morning, something happened. I woke up before my alarm. The silence was almost sacred, and for some reason I didn't touch my phone. I just stayed there, quiet, breathing, listening to my own heart. It was 10 minutes that changed everything. In that brief moment, I realized there was a power at the start of the day that no one had taught me to use. It was as if the universe opened a secret window, offering a choice. Either I controlled my day, or the world would control it for me. And it was at that moment that the practice was born that changed not only my life, but the lives of hundreds of people who now live with purpose, clarity, and prosperity. What I discovered is not mysticism, it's not a modern productivity technique, it's not a psychological trick, it's ancient wisdom, taught in the Torah more than 3,000 years ago, validated today by neuroscience. The human mind awakens each morning like a clean slate, receptive, vulnerable, open to being molded. And whoever learns to sculpt the first minutes of the day learns to sculpt their own destiny. But most don't do that. Most waste the most powerful moment of existence with the most destructive gesture of the modern age. Pick up the cell phone. Even before the body gets up, the spirit has already knelt before the chaos. News, messages, comparisons, demands. It's as if each touch on the screen erases a little more of one's own soul. And the worst part is that many believe this is just a habit. It's not. It's a surrender. How many times have you woken up tired before even starting your day? How many times have you felt like you were already late for something you didn't even know what it was? How many times have you started the morning reacting and ended the night wondering why nothing changes? The mistake lies there, in the beginning, because the way you awaken is the invisible mold that defines everything that will come. If you awaken in chaos, you attract chaos. If you awaken in scarcity, you experience scarcity. But if you awaken with purpose, discipline, and presence, the whole world begins to respond to that vibration. I learned this by observing not only my own transformation, but also the habits of the most successful people I've known. None of them wake up rushing. None of them start the day reacting. All of them, without exception, treat the morning as an altar, a sacred time, reserved for aligning thought, body, and spirit before the world begins to demand something of them. And that's what I want to teach you. The practice that freed me from debt, confusion, and doubt, and put me on a path to prosperity, not just financial, but mental and spiritual. A simple practice, but one that requires a decision. Stop being a spectator of your own life. But here's the truth. Most people will hear this and give up before even trying. They'll say it's too simple, too spiritual, impossible to maintain. These people will remain stuck in the same pattern, starting the day reacting, ending the day exhausted, and going to sleep believing the problem is out there. But the problem isn't out there. It's in how the day begins. Perhaps you feel like you've tried everything, that you've taken courses, read books, changed habits, but you always end up back at the same point. This happens because you change your body, you change your actions, but you never change the foundation, the awareness with which you begin your day. The rest is a consequence. The beginning is the code, and that code is within you, waiting to be activated. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to access this power, how to transform the first hours of your day into an inexhaustible source of energy, clarity, and prosperity. You'll understand why the ancients said that. He who masters the dawn masters destiny. But before I reveal the method to you, I want you to think about one thing. When was the last time you woke up in silence? When was the last time you listened to your own thoughts before listening to the world? When was the last time you consciously decided how you wanted to feel that day? Most people never do this. They wake up and are already trapped in an invisible current of distractions and obligations. They live busy lives, but not awake. They are constantly moving, but rarely present. And that's why the first step in transformation doesn't begin with a to-do list, nor with productivity techniques, nor with prepared prayers. It begins with a gesture of courage, the act of waking up and choosing not to surrender to the noise, choosing silence, choosing control, choosing command. This is the turning point, the moment you stop being controlled by the morning and start controlling it. And believe me, this simple act can change the course of an entire life. Because the secret isn't in how much you work, but in how you wake up. It's not in how much time you have, but in how you use that first minute. And it is this minute, the quietest and most powerful of all, that separates those who live in reaction from those who live in creation. In the next few moments, I'm going to show you how to use this minute to change everything. But before that, answer yourself honestly. Who's been in charge of your mornings, you or the world? There's a moment right after opening your eyes when the entire universe seems to await your decision. It's such a fleeting instant that many miss it without realizing it. But it's there, in that space between sleep and consciousness, that life's most silent and decisive battle takes place. Most don't even know this battle exists. And that's precisely why they lose every day. Even before the sun rises, when you wake up, your mind is still open, pure, receptive. It's like fertile soil, ready to receive the seed that will set the tone for your day. And that seed can be one of clarity, purpose and strength, or one of confusion, haste and fear. The choice happens in seconds, and almost always the choice is made unconsciously. The scene repeats itself millions of times. The alarm rings, the hand reaches for the cell phone, and the first glance of the day is at a cold screen. Notifications, messages, news, bills, tragedies. The mind, which woke up free, is immediately hijacked. And before the body even gets out of bed, the spirit is already tired. The day hasn't even begun, and the soul is already reacting. I usually say that those who wake up reacting live a life they didn't choose. Because when you start your day responding to the world, you spend the rest of it trying to regain the control you relinquished. I met a man named Eliav. He worked as a manager at a technology company. He earned well, but he was always exhausted, tense, and irritable. He said he didn't understand why. Even though he was doing so much, he felt like nothing was progressing. I asked him how he started his day. He laughed. He said, like everyone else. The alarm clock rings, I grab my phone, check the messages, answer clients, then I rush out of bed to take a shower. I asked him not to do that for a week. That, upon waking, he should remain silent for just 3 minutes before looking at his cell phone. He doubted it. He said it seemed silly, but he agreed to try. On the third day, he wrote to me, "Rabbi, something strange happened. I just stared at the ceiling, breathing. I felt a kind of calm that I didn't remember feeling in years. And the most curious thing is that, in that silence, an idea emerged, simple but clear, about a problem I'd been trying to solve for months. What seemed like wasted time turned out to be the space where his mind could finally think. At the end of that week, he told me he was more focused, more productive, and most importantly, less anxious. The world hadn't changed, but he had stopped starting his day fighting battles that weren't his. This is what almost no one understands. The fight doesn't begin when you leave home. It begins when you open your eyes. And the enemy isn't the traffic or the boss or the client. The enemy is distraction. The enemy is haste. The enemy is the mind being dominated even before it awakens. The Torah says, "He who masters the spirit is mightier than he who conquers a city." This is the essence of commanding the morning. True power lies not in reacting faster, but in deciding what deserves your attention. Imagine two musicians at the same piano. One plays random notes without rhythm, without pause. The other, before beginning, breathes, adjusts his hands, closes his eyes for a moment. When he plays, each note has intention, each pause has meaning. It's the same instrument, but the result is different because the second musician began consciously. That's what your day is like. Everyone has the same 24 hours, but few know how to use them intentionally. The difference between living by reacting and living by creating lies in how you begin. Think about how many times you've woken up and already felt the weight of the world before you even got out of bed. Sometimes it's a financial worry. Sometimes it's a conflict you carry from the previous day. Sometimes it's just a feeling of emptiness. All of this seeps into your mind before you even have time to breathe. And the day becomes a repetition of the past. But there is another way to begin, a way that the ancients knew and that wise men still practice. They knew that morning is the gateway to destiny, and whoever controls this portal controls the path. That's why prayers, meditations, and rituals always took place at sunrise. It wasn't superstition. It was spiritual science. When you awaken and choose silence over noise, intention over reaction, you change what your mind is programming you to perceive. Suddenly, what once seemed like chaos becomes direction. What once seemed like fear transforms into movement. I saw this happen with a young woman named Miriam. She came to me saying she felt her life was going nowhere. Every day was the same. Waking up, work, social media, anxiety. I asked her to wake up 15 minutes earlier and during that time, not look at her phone, not turn anything on, to just sit down and breathe. Then to write 3 sentences, what she feels, what she desires, and what she is grateful for. At first, she found it difficult. She said her mind was screaming. But little by little, something changed. She began to notice patterns, to realize what was really bothering her. 2 months later, she quit her job that made her unhappy and started her own business. It wasn't luck, it was awareness. When the mind stops reacting, it begins to create. This is the invisible battle that happens every morning, a silent war that decides whether you will spend the day being pushed by the winds or whether you will become the wind. And it's a war that no one can fight for you. The modern world wants your attention. It competes for it every second. But what almost no one realizes is that attention is energy, and energy is life. Whatever dominates your attention dominates your life. That's why taking charge of the morning isn't just a habit, it's an act of liberation. But here's the point few expect. True power lies not in isolating oneself from the world, but in learning to enter it without losing one's balance. It's not about escaping chaos, it's about being the calm within it. And it starts now. Tomorrow, when the alarm clock rings, there will be 2 paths before you. One is the old one, the automatic reflex, the impulse to react, the plunge into the noise. The other is the new one, the instant you breathe, fall silent, and choose who will take charge of the day. It seems simple, but it is at that moment that destiny is decided, and that's what we'll talk about next. The secret that separates those who awaken in chaos from those who awaken in purpose. The practice that transforms the first minute of the day into a force that reorganizes everything that comes after. And when you understand this, you'll realize the world isn't against you. It simply responds to how you begin. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to attract opportunities, clarity, and prosperity effortlessly, while others remain trapped in the same routine, always trying but never quite getting there? The difference isn't in luck or talent, it's in the way these people start their day. While many wake up reacting, a select few choose to create, and it is precisely here that true power is born. What I am about to reveal to you is the heart of all that transforms, a simple yet profound method that unites spiritual wisdom and modern science. I call it Sacred Morning Method. It is built upon 6 pillars, 6 gestures that together shape the mind, body, and spirit to live with purpose and abundance. It is not a religious ritual, nor a mystical technique. It is a power structure capable of aligning the invisible within you with the visible around you. Imagine the start of your day as the moment you chart the course of your own destiny. Each of these 6 steps is a coordinate. If you follow them, you will reach your purpose with greater clarity, peace, and prosperity. If you ignore them, you will continue going in circles. The first pillar is the silence and stillness. It seems too simple, and that's why many ignore it. But it is precisely in this empty space that the wisest voices manifest themselves. The Torah says, "Be still and know that I am God." Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of essence. It is the moment when you allow the noise to cease and the spirit to take control. 5 minutes of conscious silence can be worth more than hours of blind effort. Silence is like the sunrise, discreet yet inevitable. It clears the mind of the earth, removes the weeds from thoughts, and prepares the soil for growth. When you awaken and remain silent, you are saying to the universe, "Today, I choose to begin in control." Breath becomes a bridge between body and soul. It is in that instant that the chaos of the world loses the right to dictate your rhythm. But have you ever truly tried to be silent in the morning? No music, no screens, no distractions. Most people can't stand more than a minute. And do you know why? Because silence reveals everything we avoid hearing. Our doubts, our fears, our true intentions. It's there that the mind begins to shed its masks. That's why those who have the courage to face silence are the same ones who learn to command their own destiny. Next comes the second pillar, statements and declarations. Now is the time to speak, but not to the world. Speak to your own soul. The words you use in the morning are not just phrases. They are codes. Science has already proven that the mind does not distinguish between what is said aloud and what is experienced in reality. When you declare something with conviction, you are programming your subconscious to act accordingly. Ancient traditions already knew this. In Genesis, God creates with words, "Let there be light," and there was light. The act of speaking is the act of creating. When you declare, "I am blessed, I am capable, I am prosperous," you are not trying to deceive yourself. You are affirming a spiritual truth that the physical world has not yet perceived. You are aligning your inner field with the vibration of abundance. But have you ever noticed how people often start their day saying the opposite? "I'm tired. Nothing works out. I hate Mondays." These statements, repeated unconsciously, construct realities. They become invisible walls that limit what you can experience. The mind obeys what it hears frequently, and if it hears scarcity, it reproduces scarcity. If it hears power, it manifests power. What if instead of starting the day by saying what you fear, you started by saying what you choose? The simple act of speaking with intention is a game changer. That's why I teach my students to create a personal mantra, a phrase that summarizes the identity they wish to embody. Something like, "I am guided by divine wisdom. I am a channel of prosperity. Today, the best of me manifests." Say this with faith, and your body will believe it. The third pillar is the act of writing, to capture your thoughts on paper. This step transforms energy into matter. What is not written is lost. Unrecorded ideas dissipate like vapor. When you write, you give form to the invisible. This is why so many sacred traditions value the act of recording. Writing is fixing intention in the physical world. Grab a notebook and each morning write down 3 things. First, what you want to accomplish today. Second, what you already have and are grateful for. Third, what you learned yesterday, even if it's just a small lesson. This simple exercise organizes mental chaos. It transforms emotions into clarity and dreams into direction. But have you ever noticed how the simple act of writing can change your energy? Try putting a worry that torments you on paper. Then read it aloud. Suddenly, something changes. What seemed like a monster becomes understandable, controllable. Writing is conversing with your own conscience, and whoever masters this conversation masters themselves. These first three pillars, silence, word, and writing, are the tripod of inner mastery. Together, they realign the mind and restore the power of choice. It's impossible to live a great day when you start small on the inside. The sacred method wasn't created to give you immediate results. It was created to return you to your center. But there's something curious about all this. Many people ask me, Rabbi, what if I do all this and nothing happens? The answer is simple. Something always happens, but it's not always visible. Sometimes the transformation begins in how you see the world, not in what the world offers you. Sometimes it's like lighting a candle in a dark room. The light seems small, but it completely changes the experience of the space. Imagine what happens when you turn on that light every day, when, instead of surrendering the first few minutes to distraction, you dedicate them to awareness. Repetition creates power. The brain begins to associate that time with a state of focus and purpose. And over time, the simple act of waking up becomes a trigger for clarity. Now, think about this. What if each morning was a ritual of reconnecting with your own essence? What if the first few minutes of your day were the moment you remembered who you truly are, before the world tried to tell you who you should be? That is the true function of the sacred method. It doesn't just want to change your routine, it wants to change what routine does to you. Because when the world wakes up, it pushes you. But when you wake up first, you are the one pulling the world. And the most fascinating thing is that these first three steps, silence, declarations, and writing, are just the beginning. The portal opens here, but the journey continues. In the next steps, you will discover how to nourish the mind, move the body, and expand the spirit to create the kind of energy that effortlessly attracts abundance. But before that, ask yourself, when was the last time you started your day in silence? When was the last time you spoke with faith and not with fear? When was the last time you wrote down what you truly want to experience? The answers may reveal more about your future than any prediction could, because how you start your day is still the most overlooked secret to success. And only those who discover it understand that to command the morning is to command life. Have you ever noticed how the world seems to spin faster and faster? People wake up, rush, produce, consume, and yet still feel empty. We live surrounded by information, but hungry for wisdom. And that's precisely why how you start your day has become more important than ever. Silence, words, and writing reconnect you to your center, but there's something that completes this foundation. Something that nourishes the mind, awakens the body, and ignites the soul. Without it, the transformation remains incomplete. The next step in the method is simple yet powerful. Nourish the spirit with what uplifts it, and move the body with what awakens it. This is where the internal meets the external. Modern science has already proven that what you consume mentally in the first hours of the day shapes your mood, your decisions, and even your productivity over the next 12 hours. A study from Stanford University showed that people who start their day reading negative news are 27% more likely to report a bad day, even when nothing concrete happened. The simple contact with the chaos of the world right after waking up alters brain chemistry, activating the stress axis. Now, imagine the opposite. Starting your day by reading something that inspires you. A passage from the Torah, an excerpt from a book that reminds you why you're here, a story of someone who overcame the impossible. 5 minutes of intentional reading has a similar effect to meditating for 15, according to studies from the University of Sussex, which observed an average reduction of 68% in stress levels after calm and mindful reading. But this isn't just a scientific fact. It's a transformative experience. I remember a young man named Ariel, an economics student, who approached me saying he felt completely lost. He would wake up and read market news full of fear and pessimism. Every morning he felt more anxious and less confident. I suggested that before opening any app, he should read just a paragraph from the Torah or a proverb. Something simple, but something that would nourish the spirit instead of feeding it with fear. At first, he thought it was too harmless. "Rabbi, 5 minutes won't change anything." I simply replied, 5 minutes of light completely changes what happens in a dark room. A month later, Ariel returned. He said he couldn't explain it, but the world seemed different. He still read the same news, but now with a different awareness. What changed wasn't the market, it was his perspective. He began to see opportunities where before he saw threats. That's the power of morning light. It doesn't change the scenery, it changes the observer. You might think you don't have time for that, but think about it. How many minutes do you spend scrolling through your phone right after waking up? The average person spends 47 minutes a day just on notifications. According to a 2024 global report, almost an hour is spent distracted. If just 10 of those minutes were dedicated to nourishing the mind with wisdom, the course of your life would change in a few weeks. But it's not enough to elevate the mind. It's necessary to activate the body. And this is where many get lost. The body is the instrument that translates the energy of the soul. When the body is still, the mind lags behind. When the body awakens, consciousness ignites. Modern physiology confirms what the ancients already knew. Movement is prayer in physical form. Just 10 minutes of movement is enough to profoundly alter brain biochemistry. Dopamine and serotonin increase, cortisol decreases, and mental clarity enhances. A Harvard University study revealed that people who engage in light physical activity in the morning show 31% more focus and 23% better emotional regulation throughout the day. And most interestingly, the type of movement doesn't matter as much as the intention. Walking, stretching, deep breathing, all of this is enough to ignite the internal engine of vitality. I remember Leah, a 62-year-old teacher who wrote to me saying she felt her body was rusty and her mind sluggish. She woke up late, had her coffee in a rush, and spent the day exhausted. I asked her to take on a simple challenge. Every day upon waking, 10 minutes of movement, stretching, walking, or any light exercise. At first she laughed, "Rabbi, 10 minutes won't work miracles." Now, 3 weeks later, she told me that not only did she feel more energetic, but she slept better, thought better, and even communicated with more patience. Physical energy reorganizes emotional energy. And perhaps this is the part that few people understand. Movement is vibration, and vibration is language. When you move with purpose, the universe understands that you are available to create. Prosperity is movement. Life is movement. Nothing flourishes in stillness. But there is one last element that perfectly completes this cycle: gratitude. Gratitude is more than a gesture of politeness. It's a spiritual technology, a realignment of perception. When you truly give thanks, you don't change what you have. You change how you see what you have. And this change in perception is the first step to multiplying what you possess. Neuroscience shows that people who practice daily gratitude activate areas of the brain related to happiness and a sense of purpose. They sleep better, experience fewer symptoms of anxiety, and report up to 25% more feelings of prosperity, even without financial changes. It's as if the brain, when giving thanks, begins to look for reasons to continue feeling grateful. And what we seek, we find. Giving thanks is also recognizing the presence of the divine in our daily lives. It's remembering that nothing is guaranteed, and precisely for that reason, everything is valuable. In everything give thanks, says Scripture. Not because everything is good, but because everything is a path. Gratitude doesn't deny pain. It transforms pain into learning. I met a woman named Esther, a single mother who worked 3 jobs and lived in constant exhaustion. When we talked, she said, "Rabbi, I have nothing to be thankful for, only problems." I asked her to write down 3 good things from the day before going to sleep, anything, even if they seemed small. In the first week, she wrote, "The bread I ate, my son's smile, the fact that I'm still alive." A month later, she cried as she told me, Nothing in my life has changed on the outside, but I've changed on the inside. And suddenly, it feels like everything has become lighter. A few months later, she received a promotion and was able to open her own business. Gratitude wasn't the result. It was the seed. These elements, uplifting reading, awakening movement, and transformative gratitude, complete the circle of morning power. They don't require superhuman effort. They only require presence, because presence is the language of those who create their own destiny. At this point, you might be wondering, but what if I do all this and the world stays the same? The answer is, the world doesn't need to change. You do. And when you change, the world reacts. This is how the sacred method works. From the inside out, it doesn't promise miracles. It creates causes. And the right causes, repeated with faith, inevitably produce extraordinary results. And in the end, it all comes down to a choice that seems small, but defines everything. What you decide to do with the first few minutes of your day. Because what happens after that is not a coincidence, it's a consequence. And it is about this consequence that we will talk next. What happens when you practice this every day? When does the method stop being an exercise and become who you are? This is where everything really starts to change. When practice stops being a set of steps and becomes a natural reflection of your identity, it's the point where you no longer need to remember to do it because you've become someone who simply does. That's the power of consistency, the moment when discipline becomes second nature and effort becomes fluidity. For years, I observed people applying the sacred method. Some gave up in the first week, others continued for a while, then forgot. But there was a smaller, silent group that simply persisted. And over time, something profound began to happen. They didn't just talk about productivity or focus. They talked about peace, about clarity, about feeling that they were finally in control. The secret wasn't in the time, but in the repetition. Science confirms this. Studies show that the human brain needs, on average, 66 days to consolidate a new habit. During this period, neural connections are created and strengthened, transforming what was once conscious effort into automatic behavior. In other words, what you repeat intentionally becomes who you are. But here's the point that almost no one understands. It's not enough to repeat mechanically. You need to repeat consciously. It's the difference between doing exercises and feeling the movement, between reading words and absorbing wisdom, between saying, "I am blessed," and truly feeling that you are. The transformation doesn't happen in the gesture, it happens in the state of presence within the gesture. I remember a businessman named Daniel. He lived under constant pressure, sleeping little and working a lot. When I met him, he told me, "Rabbi, my life is a sequence of emergencies. I just react." I suggested the method. He replied, "I don't have time." I smiled and said, "Then you don't have a life. Because whoever doesn't have time for themselves lives only according to other people's agendas." Even so, he tried. He started by waking up 15 minutes earlier, practicing silence, and writing down 3 daily goals. At first, he thought it was a waste of time, but little by little, he noticed something curious. His days began to have more order, less urgency, more clarity. 6 months later, he told me, "Rabbi, I still have problems. The difference is that now I'm the one who chooses how to react. Before, the day dominated me. Now, I dominate the day." This is the true result of the method. You don't change the world. You change how the world affects you. And when that happens, a new force begins to emerge, what I call the energy of identity. It's when your body, your mind, and your soul begin to work together, as if they were finally playing the same tune. It's at this point that life begins to flow more naturally. Decisions become clearer, opportunities seem to appear out of nowhere, but it's not by chance, it's harmony. Have you ever noticed how certain people always seem to be in the right place at the right time? They're not just luckier, they're more aligned. The world responds to their frequency. When you awaken in silence, speak with faith, write with clarity, move with energy, and give thanks with sincerity, you change your frequency. and everything that's on the same vibration begins to find you. Modern physics already speaks to this. Energy follows intention. The magnetic field of the heart, according to research from the HeartMath Institute, is up to 5,000 times stronger than the field generated by the brain. This means that what you feel deeply has real power to influence your perception and, consequently, your decisions and results. Gratitude, faith, and purpose are not vague spiritual concepts. They are measurable energetic states. But why, then, are so few able to maintain this practice? Because we live in a culture of urgency. We are trained to seek quick results, and we forget that what is eternal is built over time. We want the fruit, but we don't plant the root. We want the result, but we don't sustain the process. That's why daily repetition is the most underrated secret to prosperity. Doing the same thing intentionally every day is what creates inner structure. Think of a river. It doesn't cut through the rock by force, but by consistency. The same is true for human beings. It's not the intensity of one day that transforms them, but the direction maintained over many. And perhaps the most surprising thing is realizing that when the method becomes part of you, the most important changes aren't external, they're internal. You begin to realize that you don't need to rush so much, that silence isn't a waste of time, it's a gain in awareness, that the body isn't an obstacle, it's the instrument of your presence, that gratitude doesn't depend on what happens, but on what you choose to see. That's what happened to Helena, a doctor I attended to at a retreat. She had a brilliant career, but lived in constant exhaustion. She started applying the method for 30 days. On the first day, she found it strange. On the 10th, she began to feel a difference. On the 30th, she cried. She said that for the first time in many years, she felt peace upon waking. "Rabbi," she told me, "I realized that what I called success was just noise. True success is waking up in silence and feeling alive." These words stayed with me because that's exactly it. True success isn't about doing more, it's about being more mindful. The method isn't about productivity, it's about presence. And that's why it works for everyone, regardless of age, profession, or belief. Because what it awakens is universal. The ability to be awake before the world wakes you up. But there's one last secret that few realize until they experience this transformation. When you change internally, the world around you begins to change. People start reacting differently to you. Situations resolve themselves more easily. Time seems to stretch further. It's not a miracle, it's consistency. Everything around you reflects your inner state. When you become clear, the world ceases to be confusing. When you become calm, chaos loses its power. When you become grateful, life gives you more reasons to be thankful. And this is where the journey becomes complete. And silence, words, writing, movement, and gratitude become one single melody. It's the moment when you're not just awake, you're awakened. But before we get to the end, there's something essential you need to understand. Practice, however powerful, is not the destination. It's the bridge. The destination is what you become as you cross it. And when you truly cross over, you discover that mastering the morning is only the beginning. What comes next is even more profound. It's the transformation of your own identity. And that's what I want to tell you about in the next part. Because that's where life changes direction forever. There comes a point in every transformative journey when learning needs to leave the realm of ideas and cross the boundary into action. It's the moment when knowledge ceases to be inspiration and becomes a path. And that moment, if you've made it this far, is now. You don't need to change the whole world tomorrow. You just need to change. How does your day begin? It's a small gesture, almost imperceptible, but it redefines everything. Because each morning is a blank page, and you decide whether you'll start by writing purpose or repeating distraction. What brought you here was curiosity. What will take you further is commitment. Transformation isn't a grand event. It happens quietly, in the details. When you wake up 5 minutes earlier to breathe, when you choose silence instead of rushing, when you write down something you want to accomplish, when you are grateful for something you have. These are small acts, but each one is a brick in the construction of a new consciousness. And perhaps you doubt this. Perhaps you think it's too simple or that it won't work in your reality. But look around you. Most people live tired, stressed, seeking the extraordinary while ignoring the essential. The extraordinary is not born from excessive effort. It is born from discipline applied to the simple. It is this consistency that separates those who live in reaction from those who live in creation. So here's the plan. Simple, practical, and feasible. During the next few 30 days, commit to this ritual. 30 days is the time needed for the brain to begin consolidating a new pattern. Don't try to do everything perfectly. Just do it. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. These minutes are the most valuable investment of your day. The world is still quiet, and this is your space of power. Begin in silence, just breathe. Let your body wake up. Don't touch your phone. Silence is the first command. State what kind of life you want to experience. Use simple but truthful words. Say, I am grateful, I am capable, I am at peace, I am ready. Say it until you feel it. Write 3 things. What do you want to accomplish today? What are you grateful for? And what did you learn yesterday? The paper is a mirror of your mind. Read something uplifting. It could be a psalm, a passage of wisdom, or even a phrase that inspires you. This shapes your thinking before the world tries to shape it for you. Let's move, walk, stretch, breathe deeply. An awakened body creates an awakened mind. Be truly grateful. Don't just say thank you. Feel what it means to have what you have. That feeling is the vibration of abundance. Do this every day, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Consistency is what separates temporary effort from permanent change. And if you ever doubt, remember, nobody wakes up ready. Ready is the one who chooses to begin. Progress doesn't happen when everything is aligned, but when you act even in the midst of chaos. If you wait for the perfect moment, you'll wait your whole life. Create a physical space for your ritual. A corner, a chair, a notebook. Always use the same place and the same time. The mind learns by association. The more you repeat, the easier it will be to enter the right state. And if you fail one day, don't give up. One day off doesn't cancel out all the others. Starting over is part of the process. If you can, share this commitment with someone. When you talk about what you're building, you internally reinforce your decision. And when you practice it together with another person, you create collective responsibility and energy. But above all, observe the subtle changes. They will come disguised at first. A calmer morning, a decision made with more clarity, a problem that seems lighter. These are signs that something inside you is changing. And when the inside changes, the outside inevitably changes too. What the method does is simple. It gives you back control. It doesn't promise that life will be free of challenges. It promises that you will no longer be a hostage to them. Because whoever controls their own morning controls the course of their own day. And whoever controls the day, little by little, controls their destiny. Remember, the transformation is subtle but profound. She doesn't arrive with applause. She arrives with presence. Every morning that you choose silence, intention, and gratitude, you will be becoming someone the world can no longer push away. Someone who lives with purpose. And if at any point you feel lost, go back to the beginning. Sit down, breathe. Remember why you started. Progress isn't linear. It's made up of ups and downs, but what matters is not giving up. Imagine looking back 6 months from now and realizing that that small 30-minute commitment changed everything. The way you work, love, speak, and react. That's what happens when mornings stop being a habit and become an identity. So, if this video touched you, if it sparked a desire to change, don't let that desire fade. Start tomorrow. Don't wait for motivation. Just wait for the sunrise and your own awakening along with it. And now I want to hear from you. Share in the comments, anonymously if you prefer, what you felt during this video. Write about your experience, your question, or the first step you're going to take. I want to know how I can help you on this journey. If this content made sense to you, like the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell, not only to support the work, but to continue receiving messages that keep alive the flame you lit today. Because true awakening doesn't happen in a day, it happens every morning. And tomorrow, your new story begins.